Are you a coach, consultant, or a service provider and tired of feeling invisible? Tired of wondering where can you find your ideal clients? Well, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Laurie-Ann, here to show you how to leverage speaking opportunities so that you amplify your business, position yourself as the expert, the go-to person, and turn your expertise into more income, more clients, and more opportunity. And today we're going to be talking about the common mistakes that I see people making when they are entering into and leveraging speaking opportunities as their best form of marketing. Now, we're not talking about professional speakers because I would imagine that professional speakers, although some of them are making some of these mistakes, but most of them aren't. I would hope that they have gotten to that point. But if you are new to speaking, if you've been doing a little bit of speaking for your business, you've seen a little bit of traction, but you're wondering why you don't see a lot of spin-off business, people booking appointments with you, well, it might be some of these common mistakes. And I'm breaking this down into 2 episodes. I've got a total of 6 mistakes that I want to share with you. And this first mistake is one that I do see a lot, especially if you're new. And this is overloading your audience, putting way too much information into one speech, whether you're speaking for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or 60 minutes. And anything over 60 minutes is a workshop. Just keep that in mind. If anybody ever asks you to speak for anything over 60 minutes, because I have been asked to do a keynote for 90 minutes, I knew that I had to actually get the audience to do an exercise. So more of a workshop. You want to get people moving around when you are speaking for 90 minutes straight. So putting too much information into a speech, a presentation. Now, why do we see this? We see this because when you're newer, I know that you're so eager to share as much information as you can. And you just feel like, I never know when I'm going to have this opportunity again to speak to these people. So I want to make sure that I give them tons of information. That's one. Another situation that I see people putting way too much information into their speech is when they actually feel like they have to prove something. So we've got the new speaker who just wants to make sure that I give everybody all this information. And then we've got this other speaker who wants to prove that they deserve to be up there. So I'm going to share with people all this information that I can jam into whatever the allotted time that you're speaking. Now, I was just on a podcast interview yesterday, and my interviewer asked me, is there anything else that you want to share with my audience that you feel that we haven't touched on? And I said, oh, I'm sure that there is. I have over 25 years of experience, and there's no way that I can jam all of that into the 35 minutes that we've been speaking. So that just lets people know there is so much more. I mean, this podcast episode is number 264. 264 episodes of sharing great information. I did not share it all in one episode. And here's how to know if you are jamming too much information into your presentation. People are not taking you up on your call to action. They come up to you afterwards and say, whew, wow, that was a lot. I'm not sure where to start. Now, that actually is a personal story of mine, very new into my leadership, professional speaking career. I did this. I jammed so much information into a presentation. And at the end, somebody gave me the gift by coming up to me afterwards saying, wow, that was a lot. I'm not sure what to do. And then he walked away. And I was left there like, oh, gift taken. Feedback received. And that's when I realized that jamming too much information is not going to bring people to you. As a matter of fact, it repels people from you. So here's how to remedy this. What you want to do is that you want to stick to 3 points in your presentation. You're only allowed 3 points. So imagine you are going on a trip. And if you're anything like me, You pull out the big suitcase because you're going to check your bag, and you throw all the different clothes that you want to bring on this trip onto the bed. This is exactly how I pack for a big trip. And then somebody comes and says, oh, by the way, we can't check a bag. You have to take a carry-on. So now I have to jam a week's worth of clothing into a carry-on? Impossible. So now I have to figure out what outfits are making the cut and what outfits are not making the cut. I hope you're seeing the point here with your presentation, with your speech. But then I might even say to you, instead of that carry-on, I want you to put everything in a backpack, something that's even smaller. So now you really are packing 3 outfits, 3 tips that you can give your audience in the presentation. And whenever I put presentation together, whenever I'm presenting, I always want the audience to actually walk away with gold nuggets that they can implement right away. I never want it to be something that they have to work on before they can actually go out there and do the thing, the call to action. So keep that in mind. What can you teach your audience that they can use right away, that they can make a change right away? Maybe it's a new habit. Maybe it's doing something. Maybe it's not doing something. Maybe it's changing something. There's lots and lots of ideas. But what can the audience do right away that is going to make a difference? Stick to the rule of 3. You've heard me talk about the power of 3. Make sure you have 3 or less tips that you are sharing, because if you are speaking for a shorter period of time, you're not going to be able to go over 3. You're probably going to be able to go over 2 really well. If you're talking for like 20 minutes and 20 to 30 minutes and you're trying to go over 3 points, you're really breezing over some of those points. You're not going deep is what I'm trying to say. And just keep in mind, I do not have to tell my audience everything in this first presentation. We want to get them to come and build the relationship with you, follow you on social, get on your email list, watch your videos, listen to your podcast. If you have a podcast, listen to podcast interviews that you've been on. We want to invite them in closer and to become clients of ours. Number 2 in the common mistakes that I see speakers making, or I should say like entrepreneurs, business owners that are using speaking as their best form of marketing. So here's mistake number 2. They're failing to engage with their audience. And again, I kind of did this. I did. I've told you about that very first presentation that I did where I stepped into the college professor and lectured to my audience. Although I have to say my heart was in the right place. I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I needed to know. When you step into this lecturer, this college professor, you're talking to the audience, not with the audience. You're not with them. So there's this disengagement. They don't feel you. They don't feel your stories. They just feel all of this information is coming at them. Put yourself in the audience's position. They don't feel connected to you. They feel uninspired by your stories, by your suggestions, by your ideas, by your tips. And they're just like, okay. And they don't do anything because there's this lack of connection with you and the audience. So what can you do to engage in your audience? Well, one of them is, if it's an in-person event, get there early and start meeting people. Have a smile on your face. Be open. Put your hand out first and say, hi, I'm such and such. I'm speaking at like the breakout session. I'm your lunchtime speaker. And start engaging with people. Get to know them. Hey, what compelled you to show up for this lunch and learn, this conference, this meeting? You're gathering information. And you never know, you might spontaneously be able to use their story or their situation and inject it into your presentation. Audience members love that when they've kind of been called out. They kind of feel a little special, but that does take a talent. It takes skill. So do not feel like you have to do that right away. Another way to engage with your audience and connect with them is eye contact. looking at people. If you're speaking virtually, look in the camera. You've probably heard me say that many, many times, but look in the camera, because when you look in the camera, you are looking at the eyes of the person on the other side of the screen. Ask questions. Again, you can do that virtually. You can do that in person. Polls. I mean, that's one of the fun things about Zoom these days. You can have a poll question that you automatically set up. There are apps for in-person events that you can have people go to a website or a QR code, and it brings up a poll, and let's see what the most popular answer is. And so now the whole audience is engaged. There are different ways. This is part of that neuroscience that I just love, because we want to engage the audience in your talk. When meeting planners, when the coach who booked you to come speak to their mastermind, when they see stuff like this, they're going to rave about you. They're going to refer you. People remember you because of the way that you made them feel. We want our audience to be like looking at their watch saying, really, the hour is done? Oh my God, I feel like only 5 or 7 minutes has gone by. So we want our audience to feel so into us and into our stories and into our information and our tips and our ideas that they're sad that it's over. But like all great things, it must come to an end. And this actually brings us very nicely into the third mistake that I see people making. And it has to do with the call to action. What is the next step? So I see like two things. Either it's very unclear what you want the audience to do, or you're giving them too many things to do. As a speaker, being in audiences, I've seen both. I've seen where audiences are not sure what I'm supposed to do. I remember being at this great talk, and it was about relationships. And I was like, wow, I know exactly who I could connect this person with to be on their podcast. But at the very end, it was just like, okay, thank you very much for coming and joining us. And it was just like, it falls flat. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I follow you? What if I want to work with you? Is there some sort of a lead magnet, some sort of a checklist, some PDF that I can get so that I can stay connected with the speaker? Nothing. And so that's what the audience feels. They feel that we just fell off a cliff. We were just left there hanging. And so it becomes sort of an inspiring talk, maybe, depending on the stories. But there's nothing to do afterwards. So the audience just goes on their way, pack up their bags, and then they'll leave. Now, the opposite. Too many calls to action, too many things that you want the audience to do. So here would be an example of maybe myself giving an audience too much to do. And I've never done this, but it would be, go listen to my podcast and make sure you subscribe. And then here's a lead magnet. And here's, if you're an experienced person, you can go download this lead magnet. You can follow me on Instagram. And then here's my LinkedIn handle. And don't forget, I've got this up and coming training that's coming up next week. The audience is just like, huh, what am I supposed to do? Too many options. But there gets to this point where there's too many choices. I believe the Cheesecake Factory realized this when they cut down their menu that was more like a novel and cut it down to just a few pages. And there are restaurants that I like, but the menu was so overwhelming. There's so many choices that it was just like, I can't go there because I just feel I can't make a decision about like what I want. So I ended up like having the same thing. I'll just have this burger and fries, please. Thank you. So not being clear and having too much. Too many calls to action is the same thing as overwhelming your audience with too much information. They still don't know what to do. So they do nothing and they walk out of the room and just like, oh, wow, that was great. So here's what to do. I want you to pick one call to action. As a matter of fact, you should be setting the goal for your presentation. What is your goal for speaking to this audience? And I've spoken about this before. What's your goal for speaking to this audience? And what's your goal for the audience? Those are two different goals that you should be making. If you want to learn more about those two goals, it's episode 219. It was actually a community call where I was talking about this, the Speaker Circle community call. And if you would like to join our next community call, you can go to speakandstandout.com/community. And if you're unsure of what the community calls are, these speaker circles, it is a free training that I do. I do a small training, about 10 to 15 minutes. Then I open it up to the room so that anybody who's there can ask questions. And it is limited seating because the next part, the final part of the speaker circle, is that everybody gets to go around the room and give a shout out for who they are, their business, and the topics that they speak on. So back to your single call to action, whether it's go to this webpage and sign up for this lead magnet, this webinar, this checklist, just keep it very short and sweet. During this podcast episode, I have mentioned 2 other podcast episodes. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because you might be listening to this latest episode, but you might be new to my world. So I'm going to refer you to dive deeper into some of the topics. And so I'm referring you to some other podcast episodes, and those links will be down below. And the other thing about CTAs is that newer speakers feel like, oh, I'm getting salesy, even though they're offering a free lead magnet. I want you to practice delivering your call to action. Make it very conversational. Did you feel that me talking about those past episodes was salesy? No, it was just like, hey, if you want to learn more, go to episode XYZ where I talk more about this. I've got 264 episodes. I've got a lot of episodes that I can be referring people to. Okay, so those were the 3 different mistakes that I see people making over and over again. They are overwhelming their audience with information. They are not connecting with their audience, and they either have an unclear call to action or they're giving too many calls to action. So this has been our part 1. And I just want to give you a snippet of what's coming up in part 2. We are going to be talking about neglecting your audience research. Yes, this is an important part of speaking, especially if you want to be remembered. If you want to feel like your audience, like, oh my God, they know me. They know us. Especially if you want whoever booked you to say like, wow, they customized this talk just for us. Second mistake, running overtime. And I have a great story for that one too. You've heard me say, never run overtime. It's okay if you go a little under, but just don't ever go over. And forgetting to follow up with leads. Forgetting to follow up with whoever booked you. So those are like 3 of the different mistakes that we're going to be touching on next week when you come back for episode number 266 of the Be in Demand Show. But before you go, if you are new to my world, new to my podcast, because my download numbers have skyrocketed, I would love to invite you to go and download my new listener guide. There's 264 episodes, and you're probably like, I'm not sure where to start, but I've got some great episodes from the past. So this guide actually shares with you what are my most popular downloaded episodes of all time. You can get your copy at speakandstandout.com/guide. Yes, that link will be down below. And in that guide is also a list of all my other lead magnets that you might be interested in. And also a little bit more about the speaker circle and also the speaker breakthrough sessions that I do. I've got lots of ways for you to participate either on the show as an audience member or just to get some great information and training as well. So those resources are available for you with my new listener guide. And you can grab that again at speakandstandout.com/guide. See you next week. So don't forget to hit follow or subscribe, depending on what app you are listening on, so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.